welcome to another episode of The Green Room. Today I'm joined by Seth Watts. Seth, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Super excited to have you in the Green Room today. I've known Seth, for context, for a few years now. I think you've been a big inspiration for us across our businesses, and I've learned a ton of stuff from you in the time I've known you. So I'm excited for others to be able to kind of share some of that wisdom.
Oh, I'm excited to be here.
For those who don't know Seth, I'll give you a quick fire bio and intro kind of into Seth. So Seth had a super interesting background. For 20 years was in a family business called Neo, which was founded in 1938, which is a print business. So some would say the old school side of kind of real estate marketing.
It is.
And then in more recent times, Seth co-founded a business called Campaign Agent, which has been a huge success. Exited that business to real estate marketing and basically carved out, a brand new category in terms of pay later, vendor paid financing for real estate marketing. Exactly. So, what I'm super excited about today is kind of you've got the kind of the old world and the new world kind of colliding on your journey. And obviously, we're at a time of just rapid change. And, we were discussing off camera before we started, just the amount of information and new tech kind of coming at people is quite frightening at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And it's I was just having a conversation with one of our lead developers, and we're having these fascinating conversations about sort of opportunity, but it's all wrapped up into a threat at the same time for how are we going to work and what's our jobs going to look like. And it's a very interesting time. And I think it's fair to say a super exciting time.
Yeah, totally.
But also I think it's you have to recognize a really uncertain time as well.
Yeah.
And I think for us all as leaders and as marketers and thinking about building and growing businesses, we sort of need to grapple with both of those things. And then we need to think about, well, great, how are we going to grab this opportunity and minimize those threats? So I'm really excited to talk about that.
And I think, what hopefully we'll do today and what we focus on here in this podcast is show how do you kind of make sense of some of the noise? Because I think when there's, new technology, inevitably there's a lot of noise. And I think I've certainly... if I think about social and kind of the last digital evolution, which is kind of like social media, I think there was a lot of noise, but nothing like what we've kind of got today in terms of
and it took a lot longer. The noise all pops up, and then it takes 5 or 10 years.
Correct.
So, which was kind of nice for all of us, right? Because we had time to adapt. And I think the question I'm struggling with is, should I be thinking about all of this change and it's going to take 10 years, or do I believe the tech people who are going to say it's going to take 2 years? And
for sure.
We can talk about how that actually will play out.
So maybe kind of before we get to that, I think a good place to start for context is just that transition for you from kind of Neo, I think it's third generation family business.
Grandfather started it.
Grandfather started it. So that kind of evolution for you, how did you kind of go from that, transition from like print traditional media into what you're doing now being, into the campaign agent journey, I suppose. And clearly you've got a massive passion for technology and real estate. Right. So how did that kind of transition happen for you?
Okay. So print, which to be clear, I'm still heavily involved in and we're still heavily invested in, but it's one of those industries which is constantly trying to be commoditized by everybody.
Yeah, totally.
Its biggest threat is a combination of relevance, focus, but everybody wants it to be a commodity. And so that first 15 years of my career for that business was really very little about print. It was about saying, great, we want to deep dive. How do we differentiate the product? How do we create a competitive moat? And how do we create some kind of pricing power so that as everybody tries to commoditize this, we actually can make a bit of money here? Because print is it's really easy to create a $20, $30, $40 million print business, but it's also really easy to create a print business that has a 1 or 2% return. So you get volume, but not necessarily profit. So my sort of technical journey started really early. We looked at print and said, great, we think that the gap between print and commoditization is going to be about creating very, very low friction to order. So
interesting.
My first 10 years was basically building out ordering and booking systems.
So it's like customer experience more than anything else.
But it was also, print is not a grudge purchase, but it's certainly a low emotional involvement process.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So it's all about how easy can you make it. And we spent 10 years basically developing, at first, a cutting edge online ordering system. We ended up ironically, booking almost $250 million worth of marketing into The Age, because the same ordering system you could use to order a brochure was really good for ordering ads.
Yeah, interesting.
So we sort of built our own little proptech, which, by the way, we blew up pretty badly in the GFC. So I've got plenty of failures on my journey. But we spent almost the entire time, and we do to this day, not necessarily thinking about print. That's the output. It's about how do we make it, how do we embed ourselves into our customers' workflows deeper and deeper and deeper. And so my print business is really about ordering systems and making people think about the ordering process as little as possible.
Well, that kind of makes me think the temptation for you guys to probably extend the nature of what you do and kind of move into like adjacencies like digital. You mentioned kind of The Age and the fact that it became an ordering system for that.
Right.
I'm sure there were plenty of temptations along the way for you guys to diversify out of print, or not out of print, diversify within the context of that business. So you've obviously remained focused on just being the best real estate print business. So talk to us a little bit about that.
So it's funny. I find that people look in the wrong places to make money. And whenever a 21-year-old comes to me and says, what should I do with my career? and the temptation is always for that 21-year-old, I want to go into AI, or I want to go into fashion, or I want to go into something sexy, right? Is my experience is it is vastly easier to become wealthy by picking an industry that has really bad competition rather than really strong growth. And what I mean by that is, if you go into print, all of my competitors, every single one of them is 60, 65 boomer. Yep. They're kind of angry with the world. They're not particularly creative. They're really annoyed that their kids don't want to take over the business. Nobody wants to buy it. Yep. And it means that, to be frank, we have a really easy competitive job compared to, say, Campaign Agent, which Campaign Agent was a great business, but we jumped into buy now, pay later when Afterpay was at its peak. Everybody was coming into that market. And it was quite confronting for me, because all of a sudden I'm dealing with the smartest MBAs, I'm dealing with these amazing entrepreneurs, and the competition was ruthless. And even though we went and we create this amazing value, we go and sell Campaign Agent for lots of money, in reality, coming back to print, it's always been easier to make recurring, substantial profit out of that business than any other business I've worked for. So, I would always challenge people to think, listen, sometimes don't go for what the sexy industry is. Maybe try and find where the worst competition is, and because that's kind of a nice way to have a really interesting life. Yeah,
it's interesting. Like I remember a conversation with Mike really early doors in the days of Social Garden, and I remember him saying to me, cool doesn't really make money. And I remember thinking at the time, like, everyone kind of in our space was really focused on like e-com, fashion, like kind of where the sexy brands were, and we were just like, where can we create the most amount of value within an industry? And we started in kind of education and property, where probably there was a lot of opportunity to kind of disrupt the status quo, not in fashion and like cool brands.
Exactly. All the cool stuff, right? And you look at people who are running like steel businesses or security businesses or fencing businesses. Like at dinner parties, nobody wants to talk to them.
Yeah.
They walk out of the dinner party into their Ferrari and drive home. And you're like, what's going on here, right?
So how do you, with what you know and your kind of experience across digital and tech and AI and obviously print, what's your kind of view on the modern marketing stack within real estate and kind of how that's evolving? Obviously, it's clear there's a role for print and, it's clear there's a role for more traditional media, but now there's kind of the evolution of discovery and platforms like ChatGPT, and the way people search and discover property is changing. So how do you kind of think about, the marketing mix for the kind of modern real estate marketer?
I don't.
Yeah.
So I'm going to answer a different question.
Yeah, cool.
Because I actually don't think that's... If I was a marketer for a big corporation or for a property business or for a developer, that wouldn't be how I would be thinking. Because I actually think as an industry, we're really good at chasing shiny new objects. Whenever something new comes out, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's AI engine optimization, all that stuff, we're really good at following those bouncing balls. But if I was a marketer or an executive, I actually think that's a distraction right now.
Yeah.
Because that isn't where I'd be putting my effort. Because I'd sort of let the market sort that out. Like I'd follow the bouncy balls a bit to keep everybody feeling like we're progressive, but I think the basics matter more. I think the more interesting question for marketers and marketing teams specifically is not what's sexy outside the business, but how can we develop radical capability in the business? So AI is going to do what AI is going to do. OpenAI is going to do what OpenAI does. You get to decide, however, what your business is going to do and how you're going to use these tools. So where I get really excited in 2025 and 2026 is how can I radically scale every single person in my team?
Yeah.
Or how can I radically downsize my team and get radically increased efficiency, independent of what platform it is? Because it feels to me that we have just been handed this amazing set of tools where I can not only create content essentially for free, in many cases increasingly high quality, not only can I deliver that content at very low cost through multiple platforms using automation, I can then analyze it in different ways. So I actually think that as an industry, the most important thing we need to do, and as individuals who, let's face it, I think the financial controllers in our organization are going to be going, if all content now can be done by AI, why do I need the marketing team at all?
Great margins. That's what
they're thinking, right? So I think as marketing teams, we really need to figure out about two things. One of which is how do we use these new tools to deliver radical efficiency, radical outcomes, radical impact? Because we can do all of those things in really interesting ways. But, and this is super important, how do we effectively build portfolios of outcomes that we can then show the CFO? So measurement, analysis, and proof of efficacy, and they've always been important, right?
Yeah, totally.
But I think as marketing teams, we really need to get good at that. And I think unlike before, where we needed lots of analytics and we needed the sort of data engineers to help us do that, AI can do that for us.
Sure.
And if I was sort of sitting in the shoes, which I am, as I sit in the shoes of a marketing executive, I'm thinking about two things. One is, what can I do at a scale of 10 times what I currently do? Yeah. And how can I make sure that I'm effectively showing I've done it and that it worked? So I'm spending half my time on the actual work, half my time on reporting on it.
That's interesting, the split of time, how you think about that.
Because you need to, especially if you're working in a big corporate, you need to be able to prove to the CFO you're delivering value, because he or she is seeing you as a cost. And this is we're in a bit of this bridging period, and I think we need to be really careful and strategic about how we manage internally as well as externally.
Yeah, and I think from what I've seen going into a lot of organizations and talking to them about, how AI is impacting their business and where the opportunities are, I think what I see the most where the opportunity is just around standardization of how people are kind of using the tools. Because I think in order to effectively measure the output, you kind of need to have a clear strategy of what you're trying to achieve, as you said, in terms of a portfolio, and then a structured approach to actually achieve the outcome so you can measure it. It's hard if you've got half the team using Claude differently, and then you've got half the people using ChatGPT, and they kind of got different use cases. It's like standardized roadmap and then kind of measurement, I think, is key.
Do you know the other thing I think is challenging is having enough ambition. And so I find this all the time personally, is that in the olden days, in 2023, I could do 40 hours worth of work and get 40 hours worth of output. By 2024, I could do 40 hours worth of work and get 50, 60 hours worth of output because I could use LLMs to go through and do work for me. What I'm finding now is that, this is not just on the coding side, it's also on comms, is that in 20 minutes I can do 3-4 hours of work. So I need to make a decision then as a staff member, because nobody's noticing. Everybody's like, oh, Seth's doing a great job and super efficient. Or I can say, I need to do 10 times as much work.
Yeah.
And that's like really hard. How do you figure out what to do? And what do you do? And I'm finding that as an individual, I've really got to expand my own awareness of what I can do. And then I've got to hold myself accountable to it. So when I do that, it's awesome, because all of a sudden you become this like super effective and, to be frank, really powerful sort of employee for the organization. When I forget, the CFO is knocking on my door and saying, why aren't you delivering the results, right? So this is not an easy time.
And like practically, is that how do you do that? Is that time boxing? Is it? I imagine part of that, right, is like you need to kind of be able to measure the input to measure the output. So how do you actually, because that's what I struggle with, right? Is like, particularly when you're in an executive role, you're moving from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. How do you actually measure out? Sometimes in a week, it's like a 30-minute thing that you did that had the most amount of impact across the week. So like, how do you actually kind of measure the inputs personally?
Well, let me speak about how. So I'm in a small startup right now, looking at doing a legal AI company, where and I don't know if this is where we're going to land, but let me share with you how we're thinking about it, is we are undoing 100 years worth of management theory. So for 100 years, organizations have been about specialization. So let's get more and more teams who are getting better and better, and we'll build this really sophisticated management and leadership theory to make these big organizations work. What we're finding in an AI world is you do the exact opposite.
Yeah.
You actually create really specific, highly empowered people who can do lots of stuff. And if you come into my marketing team, you'll have one person who is doing the work of content generation, they're doing SEO, they're doing internal, external comms, they're also doing analytics, and when you look at their screen, they've actually got 5 browsers open and they're all doing the work. But it means that you need employees that have really good big picture understanding. Look at my developers. They're actually doing the work of 10 different specialized teams, but they're doing it all as one person. But it means the people who are doing the work need to understand everything. Like you need to understand customer, you need to understand executive, you need to understand strategy. You've got to have, so what we're finding is that you need to have people who have a much broader organizational perspective, which by the way, marketers tend to be really good at that because marketers understand customer, they
business,
understand, so they're in a really good position, but they almost need to step on other departments' toes a bit.
And how do you feel about kind of growing that within an organization versus kind of bringing it? Because obviously it's different for you now. Kind of you've got a clean slate. You can kind of start. You've got a very clear picture, particularly having coming out of the campaign agent experience. I imagine.
And realestate.com,
and exactly being
beast, right?
an REA. Like, how do you feel about kind of your ability? Or an organisation like ours, the ability to be able to kind of grow those traits within people versus kind of finding the right person and bringing them into the organisation.
I think it goes back to that expectation and ambition, right? So if you're a leader at Social Garden or another sort of, let's call it mid to large size organisation, as a leader, you've got to have the courage to actually say, you know what, I'm going to expand your remit well and truly beyond what I would normally say. So if you're marketing, I'm going to grow that out and actually let you do both the analytics as well as the delivery, whatever it might be. But by the way, my expectations is that in a week, you're going to deliver 4 weeks worth of work. Now, I don't know how you're going to do that, and I understand you're not going to know, but you've got to give people the big, hairy, audacious goal. And you've got to then say, here are the tools, go figure out how to use them. And then you've obviously got to have a willingness for failure. But my experience is that you've also got to have a willingness for success, because what exactly do you do if all of a sudden your marketing team now can do an end-to-end campaign without requiring any of your graphic designers, any of your brand, potentially any of your legal department? Like, how do you think about that? Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Because I promise you, if marketing's doing it independent of your legal general counsel, he's going to be pissed. And he's going to be like, that's not appropriate. But then when marketing shows you, well, here's our legal advice, it's all legitimate, it's better than what we've got internally, how do you lead through that? And so I think there's got to be a willingness to disrupt yourself in some unanticipated ways.
Yeah, I think like what I'm kind of grappling with a little bit at the moment, knowing that is like, we've got a very, like we've spent, 10, 12 years refining our kind of workflow solution. And I'm like,
specializing it, right?
Yeah. And now I'm kind of looking at it like, I think it's the thing that's holding us back is like, we've got this kind of we've built this conveyor belt of process that enables us to like create really great campaigns and ads and, but I'm like, I feel like we're trying to kind of integrate the technology into our existing processes, and maybe we just need to throw our processes out and start again, because not start again, but reinvent them, I guess.
And I think the hard thing, right, is that everybody's and I think everybody's sort of happy in their groove largely. Like if you're a developer, it's like, great, here are my responsibilities. What AI is giving that developer the opportunity to do is to radically increase their responsibilities, and they may not like that.
Yeah.
They just may not be comfortable with the fact that, what do you mean I'm going to get my own legal advice, or what do you mean I'm going to go through and check regulatory compliance? And the organization may be really uncomfortable with that. But how do you, as a leader, firstly, how do you give permission for people to do that? As a leader, how do you take people out of their comfort zone? And when you do that as an organization, how do you reintegrate that? And my advice is you need to take your very best people that preferably have nothing to do with technology. And you need to give them ridiculous deliverables that are impossible without AI, and then give them room to actually experiment. We're finding that we're getting really good results out of that.
You're obviously super close to real estate offices, right? So, I'm out there talking to a lot of these sales agencies, and again, similar conversations, right? Where they're thinking about introspectively, how do we kind of apply this technology into where we work to get kind of these efficiency gains to enable us to unlock value, right? So, if you're in a real estate agency office right now, what are the things you're kind of focused on practically across knowing what you know in terms of kind of the whole ecosystem and how these guys create value and make money? Yeah. Where are you starting?
Right. So my experience is where everybody wants to go is not where you should go. So where in real estate you make money when you list a property, not when you sell it. So in real estate, people will spend 95% of their time mastering the listing presentation in the living room because they're smart and that's where value is created. And they may or may not learn how to sell a house because it actually isn't that important. That's the bit that will happen, right? In a bad market, that's bad advice. But for now, listing property is where the money's made. And so when you show a real estate agent AI, they're like, awesome, I'm going to prospect 100,000 people. I'm going to get AI to call 100,000 consumers. Yeah. My sense is that is the wrong instinct. And the reason I say that is because we're talking about $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 transactions. I don't have the appetite or the risk appetite to actually send AI to go and represent me and to do those negotiations, at least not yet. That might change. But for now, my sense is that when I'm talking to real estate agents, I really try and get them to focus on not just how to make their existing operations better, but how can you, again, be ambitious and expand the experience for all of your buyers and your sellers? And I'm actually pushing people to focus on segments of the market they wouldn't necessarily focus on. Because I'm still a little bit concerned about hallucination. I'm still a little bit concerned about AI going rogue. So, for example, I would not call a vendor with a $40,000 listing using AI ever. In fact, I wouldn't even send an AI email that was automated without personally checking it because I'm just not there yet. But what I would do is say, you know what, in our business, and I'll pick a hypothetical real estate agent, we have 5,000 tenants. And you know what? The only time we ever talk to them is when the hot water service is broken. But I would then be saying, well, great, AI would be a great way for me to have conversations otherwise I couldn't afford to have or wouldn't have. Why don't I talk to those 5,000 people? Because you know what? They're going to sell and buy a house at some point. It would be great for them to have a unique experience within my property management. Conversely, we've got 800,000 people in our database, of which only 10,000 are active buyers. What are we doing about the other 790,000? How could we then use AI to create personalized engagement? And so I think those are relatively low value. I want to be clear. But I think they're really nice places for real estate agents to, one, have strong points of difference, create unique experiences, and also experiment without a lot of risk. At the end of the day, if AI goes crazy and says something mean to a tenant, it's a shitty outcome, bad outcome.
It's manageable.
It's manageable. That is very different if they say something negative to a vendor with a $50,000 commission on the line. That's existential disaster. So I'm thinking, and I think we do have to learn how to use these tools. So I'm thinking about low cost, high impact, differentiated experiences, and that's where I'm trying to push clients to. And then obviously there's just the day-to-day automation.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting you talk about, ultimately the customer experience and using the tech to basically improve the experience, not just make it easier and increase margins, right? Because you ultimately win more listings by virtue of delivering a better product for your existing customers. And I think ultimately, looking at hundreds and hundreds of CRMs and looking at conversion by source is without a doubt referrals has kind of got the highest conversion rate of any marketing channel on the planet, right? When it comes to real estate.
And I mean the other thing, George, right, is I think also from a humanistic point of view, you can look at AI as a CFO would and just say, great, I can fire people and cut costs and do all that stuff, which is I don't want to be that person. I'd rather be the leader who's figuring out how do we build and grow the business? How do we make more money, create more opportunity, create more customer connections? How do we build the pipeline? And that's another choice we have as leaders, right? Are we going to have a growth mindset or a cost mindset? And I'm not denigrating the CFO. You've got to have strong cost control.
For sure.
But I think it's really easy with AI to go down the rabbit hole of getting rid of people. And to be frank, that's not the person or the leader or the country or society I want to live in. I think there's some onus on all of us to figure out how do we grow the pie here, how can we create these amazing sets of experiences, and how can we create fabulous wealth for everybody.
For sure.
That's here, right? Like,
yeah,
we can
totally.
do that.
And again, I think like what comes from that is to what you spoke about earlier, is it comes from structure. It comes from setting expectations and pushing people to actually get outside of their comfort zone and deliver something, and ambition. And like, I think, what supplements that is training and knowledge, and, obviously having people, it requires the leaders within the organizations to obviously like be kind of going deep themselves and investing the time and energy into understanding how they can apply the technology to their day-to-day, because it's got to come top down.
It's funny you mentioned that, right? Because I think that's like when I'm sitting down and doing consulting work with particularly with executives of big companies about AI, like if you really want to see them squirm, tell them the truth, that exactly what you said. This has to come from top down. The programming language of AI is English and wisdom.
Totally.
And guess what executives have? They've got great communication skills and they've got a bit of wisdom most of the time. But there's a responsibility that comes with that, right? Because now all of a sudden you're telling the executive team you can't outsource it to the 25-year-old boffins. You need to lead on this. And, for those of you who are 25-year-old boffins, like, it's funny, like, you've got a serious competitive advantage there.
Totally.
Executives are like, oh, I actually don't want to sit down in front of a keyboard and do the work in lots of cases.
And that's kind of what we spoke about before, right? Is like that kind of, again, it's like the existential, oh my God, it's going to be all of these jobs that young people are going to deliver are no longer going to be needed because they're going to be done by computers. And then there's the opportunity side of that, which is, oh my God, we're the best people to kind of leverage this technology to actually deliver value for organizations.
Exactly. And can I speak to that? Because I think there are a lot of 25-year-olds I'm talking to who are genuinely concerned, and I think legitimately concerned.
For sure.
But the advice I would give to that cohort is you're right to be concerned, and because you are concerned, it means you're thinking about it, which is great. The action you need to take, though, becomes really important, because there's no point in worrying without action. You need to take that worry and turn it into positive action, and that action becomes about adoption, but I think it also becomes about internal thought leadership, because I promise you, if you're freaking out about it, everybody else in the organization
totally.
is. And those people who take that step, learn it, master it, to your point, turn it into processes, turn it into trainable tools, and then share them through the organization, guess what? Those are the executives of the next 20 years. And so if you're 25, own it, start doing experiments, start to master it, but most importantly, teach it.
Yeah.
Turn it into processes, turn it into projects in Claude or custom GPTs and ChatGPT, and then go to your executive and offer to reverse mentor. Because I promise you, the executive isn't going to come to you asking for your advice.
For sure.
But if you go to them and say, I'd like to reverse mentor you on this tool because I think it's really useful.
That.
And the cool thing about that, right, is the executive says yes, and the executive starts to teach you all of their wisdom. And
For sure. I love that. Great advice.
And I think that's what I want to see out of the 25-year-olds in my organization.
And it's like we don't have time to talk about education and how that's going to evolve. But I think that whole like self-learning, we've seen a lot of that happen increasingly with like technological tools where there's open source learning available. I think this is like you can be learning on the fly and building your knowledge so rapidly just by getting in and accessing the tools for free.
Totally. And we're talking about this concept of a synthetic apprenticeship now in our organizations where we're saying, listen, it used to be that you had to put in the time, the effort, and the energy, as well as get the experience. And the only way to get from apprentice to master was time and experience.
Yeah.
You still need the experience, but you don't need the time anymore, because you can sit down now with ChatGPT and say, I want to master crisis communications for a large organization. Give me 100 case studies. Still got to do the work.
Yeah, for sure.
You can compress that set of experiences into a very short period, which we call this synthetic internship or apprenticeship, and allow you to spend a compressed time mastering it. And two things. One, you need to do the work, but you also need to prove that you've done the work. So if you're a young person and you do a synthetic apprenticeship on whatever, I want you to think about two things. Do the work and master it, but nobody's going to believe you know what you're talking about. Unless, as you're doing the synthetic internship, you create like a portfolio of outcomes, like whether it's a Google Drive or a website, whatever it is, it shows all the different stuff you've done and how you've mastered it and shows your own work. Because I think you're going to find increasingly that executives say, geez, that person did a synthetic internship and look at this amazing outcome portfolio they have. They're only 25, but they're talking like they're 35. And guess what? They've actually had 35 years worth of experience. So there's ways to master this world. It ain't easy, but it never was.
And that opportunity as well with the kind of, you have the ability to collate the information much faster. And as you say, you still got to do the work to learn it. But
Yeah.
what I love when I'm learning something new on Claude or ChatGPT is the ability to then convert it into an application, like to basically go through like a test, simulated test and do that stuff, where it's like, for me, that's kind of, I need that to like store the information.
Totally.
And the ability to create like interactive learning experiences off the back of the information is so cool. With
No, it's wild what's happening in the education space. But I think you're hitting the nail on the head. Like when we think education, we think young people in high school and university. I think what I'm trying to communicate is I think that I don't care whether you're 55 or 65, you're going to have to really get into that mindset, because you've got a free tutor who will literally adapt to your learning style, whatever that is.
Yeah.
It's painful, it's work, it's out of your comfort zone, but hey, losing your job to AI is also pretty painful and out of your comfort zone. So why don't you avoid that and just become a master of
and I love what you just said. Like, I think a good closing note is like, it's never been easy. And like,
exactly.
despite the fact that you get leverage from this technology, it's like, but guess what? The expectations of the bar's kind of been raised from an expectation. Ultimately you got to do the work.
The bar's been raised, but the tools to get to that bar have been improved just as fast. So.
For sure. Well, thank you so much, Seth. It's been a wonderful conversation. For people wanting to connect with you, is LinkedIn the best place for them to find you?
LinkedIn's awesome, and come check out the new business, prepared.com.au.
Love it. Awesome. Thanks very much, Seth. Appreciate it.
Thanks.